In this video, we explore the intricate notions of life units nested within all life units, revealing the basic principles of all living beings. We'll delve into the notion that life units are abundant and omnipresent, offering a new lens through which we can perceive the world around us. Stay tuned until the end, where we'll discuss the relevance of the paradigm to our daily lives. Let's start by unfolding the perspectives on the nature of life itself. Martinus introduced three principles, which he terms x1, x2, and x3. x3 is the I, not like an I, but the I in like I do something. It is the steering principle in the living being. The I possesses the ability to create and perceive, which Martinus terms as x2. The third principle, x3, refers to the matter or substance, which is steered or directed by the I and the ability to create. Together, these three principles is the principle of a living being. The notion is that there is an intent behind the matter. The matter is an expression from a living being. There is something behind the matter that contributes with an intent and meaning to the matter that we experience. We know this from our fellow human beings, which we know express intent. Intent and meaning is an expression of consciousness, and consciousness is the sign of living being. So matter becomes a general expression of life. Matter consists of a letter in the language of life. Sometimes we can read this language, and sometimes we can't. Sometimes we don't even realize it is a language. We usually only recognize the language from human beings and to some extent animals, and in even lesser extent from plants. If matter is an expression of life, then life must be far more prevalent than we typically imagine. The idea is that everything we experience is in fact an expression of life. From the tiniest particle to the vast cosmic structures, Martinus' perspective challenges our conventional understanding. According to Martinus, the Earth is a living being with remarkable similarities to our own bodies. From its core, akin to a heart, to the seas representing its blood, the Earth exhibits advanced function mirroring our internal system. The humanity constitutes the Earth's brain, and our culture is the Earth's thoughts. Martinus calls our bigger living beings for our micro living beings. Our micro living beings are living beings that we live within. In our case, the Earth. The macro living beings also have intent, plans, and consciousness. The notion of macro living beings extends beyond the Earth. The Earth is also living within another living being that we know as our solar system. The Sun and its planets is also the expression of a living being or life unit. The solar system is difficult to grasp as a living being. It's very different in its physical structure from human beings and the Earth, but it can still be a living being. Why? Because it shows logic and planning. Without the Sun in the middle of the solar system and its planet, there will be no humanity on Earth. The solar system has to be in a very delicate balance to enable life on Earth. Delicate balance measures up in complexity to the balance that has to be in our own body, in our machine, computers, etc., in order to make these works. And we know that in order to make these machines, computers, etc. work, it takes a lot of effort, planning, and consciousness, which again is a sign of a living being. Martinus states that logic is an expression of thoughts and consciousness. Consciousness is the sign of a living being, and thus a solar system is a living being, as strange as it might sound. Our solar system is part of the Milky Way. Martinus explains that the Milky Way and other galaxies are also living beings. Galaxies are also part of a bigger living being, which again is a part of a bigger living being. This principle never ends. So there is no biggest living being. If we had a biggest living being, what would this living be part of? What would be beyond its boundaries? If we had a biggest living being, what would this living being be part of? What would be beyond its boundaries? No, the universe is infinite. It can be a bit mind-boggling that we, at least in theory, can travel forever in the universe, but that's how Martinus describes it. It can be a bit mind-boggling that we can, at least in theory, travel forever in the universe. This is how Martinus describes it, and it's pretty difficult to argue against that there should be some emptiness or nothingness beyond the universe. Now let's shift our focus to the micro beings within ourselves. Within our bodies, organs serve as complex systems with distinct function that makes our body work. Martinus explains that these organs are living beings on a smaller scale, possessing their own consciousness. The parts of our body can be more or less advanced. Our nails and our hair are without consciousness, so we can cut them without hurting. Most of the remaining part of our body hurts when it gets damaged in some way. This hurting is impulses from living microbeings. It is their thoughts that gets picked up and sent through our nervous system and reach our consciousness so we can experience and react to it. Our organs consist of cells, and these are living beings as well. Cells are very complex in their inner working, and they take in nutrition as we do, so they have common attributes with us as living beings. Cells again consist of molecules, which consist of our atoms. Both cells and atoms are considered living beings by Martinus, but they are even more foreign to us as living beings than organs and cells. Atoms also consist of living beings and so on, so there is an infinite amount of smaller living beings within us, as there are infinite larger beings surrounding us in the macrocosm. Our body consists of an infinite number of living beings. We are in a way finite infinity in the sense that we experience something finite, body, but it is infinite within this limit. I talk about this in my eternity video, which I have linked in the description below. In this segment, we dive into the concept of perspective. Just as we perceive micro living beings, there are micro living beings that perceive us. So how do, for instance, atoms perceive us? Well, they have us as their micro living beings. They will perceive us as their universe. They will experience us as their sky filled with stars, although it will be a different formation of stars because they look at a different living being us. It will be the formation of stars that our body is made up of. We can also imagine the micro living beings' perception of us. And to the Milky Way, we as human beings will be so small that the details cannot be directly perceived by the Milky Way. It will be experienced by the micro beings as we perceive our micro living beings. That is, as a material or substance, if not so small that we cannot perceive them directly at all. The same principles and similar experiences are in the small and in the big. All living beings consist of living beings. All living beings are part of non living beings. The same principles and similar experiences are in the small and in the big. All living beings consist of living beings, and all living beings are part of a non-living being. Why is this principle of life units or life within life relevant? Well, it means our body consists of conscious living beings and not that matter or material. We have a responsibility for these living beings as well as we have for humans and other living beings around us. This becomes important in many areas, and I will go into the areas of nutrition and burial. So if there's life in microcosmos, it means our food consists of living beings, and these living beings has to be transferred to our body through digestion for us to have a physical life. Martinus describes our body can obtain simple living beings such as plants and fruits, but our body has to work too hard to digest more advanced living beings that come from meat. Meat consists of advanced living beings which are closer to our own level of consciousness than the living beings that are found in plants and fruits. Thus, Martinus states that our ideal food, as of now, are plant-based and not meat-based. The plant-based food are easier obtained because the living being goes into a body more directly with less effort and find in our digestion. So this is an example of why the idea of life units are important to us. The principle of life units also has implications for funerals. When we burn bodies, we burn lots of living beings who lived in our bodies. Burning bodies could be replaced by a more human burial, for instance, to let the body dry out to the extent possible, in order to avoid killing our micro-living beings. Food and funeral were a couple of examples on how the principle of life units has a practical implication on our lives. There's much more on these topics, just mentioning them to make the topic practical and relevant. I hope this glimpse into Martinus' profound insights has ignited your curiosity. Join the discussion by sharing your thoughts and questions in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more enlightening content. Thanks for watching. It's much appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you.